This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss, co-host of PBS's MotorWeek. He'll take your calls and comments now at 844-885-4677 or email him at radio@goss-garage.com. And now, Pat Goss.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Goss's Garage. I'm Pat Goss. If you'd like to talk about your automobiles, just like the announcer says, 844-885-4677. Now, you can call that number 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Leave us a message. We'll get back to you. We'll solve your problem. Other ways that you can reach me. radio@goss-garage.com. That's radio@goss-garage.com. Or Pat Goss at goss-garage.com. So you've got all kinds of ways to reach me, and we will work on your car problem. All right, now, speaking of car problems, you know, a lot of you are going to be buying cars, so you're ready to buy a car. And when that happens, you're finding all kinds of pitfalls to avoid. Things like negotiating your deal, negotiating your financing. You have to also resist buying a bunch of add-ons that the finance manager says will only cost you a few extra dollars a month. Well, that's true, but don't forget that only $18 a month, which sounds pretty reasonable, is actually $1,300 plus interest out of your pocket over a 72-month contract. Then there's the value of your trade. And let's not forget finding that perfect car to buy, which brings up one of the least understood parts of buying a car, making sure it fits. Fits your lifestyle, fits your driving style, has the room you need, gets the fuel economy your budget allows, and all the other things that make a car the right car. But most important is making sure the car fits you. To make sure a car is right requires a road test, and not just that dealer trip around 3 or 4 blocks of pre-selected nice roads. Nope. You need to drive the car on the roads you drive on, with the same kind of load you normally carry. But before you do that, you should see if the car physically fits you. See, before you go out on the road, take time to sit in the car and adjust the seat to be sure there is a setting that matches your legs, arms, and your butt. Then check that the steering column can be adjusted to a comfortable driving position. Now, while you're doing this, make sure the seat isn't too firm or too soft, because either will become uncomfortable over the long haul. Now, see if the position for both elbows is comfortable, and then adjust the headrests to be sure they don't interfere with movement or visibility. Next, adjust both inside and outside mirrors to make sure you can see what's around you, and the mirrors themselves don't interfere with outward visibility. Now, this may seem odd, but I was driving an up-level import the other day, and the outside mirrors were so big and so high they blocked visibility around corners and in traffic. Now, I wouldn't be able to live with that car, even though it's highly rated and wildly popular. Now, for a truly important part of your test, making sure the seat belts are comfortable. Only after all these basics have been tested and every one of them passes muster does it make sense to drive the car. After all, if it doesn't fit you, what's the point of driving it? Now, no matter how madly in love with the car you are, if it doesn't fit you properly, you won't be happy for the long haul. But if the car passes the basic tests, it's time for a test drive to see if it rides, handles, stops, and feels the way you want the car of your next several years to feel. Remember that most of these fitment issues are impossible to solve because they are too expensive, or would be illegal, or would compromise the car's warranty and safety. Even if the road test is positive, you still don't run out and sign on the dotted line. Nah, you head on over to the car rental place and rent the same car for the weekend. Then you load the rental with all the crap you normally carry, and you drive it like you drive your car over the roads you normally drive. At the same time, check the real-world gas mileage to see what it does on the road, not just on paper. By doing a comprehensive road test, you'll buy a car that's better suited to you and your family. Finally, don't buy a car based solely on a magazine or TV review. Even if every reviewer that ever tested a particular car loved it, it won't be their car, it will be your car. And it has to make you and only you happy. So do that road test and do it right, and you'll be a lot happier with the car. See, modifying cars, we get lots of complaints and questions and so on. Oh, well, I bought this yah-yah car and took it on a trip to the shore the other day, and the seats are like boards after you've been in them for a while. Well, okay, what would you like to do about that? Well, can't you make them softer? No. I mean, yeah, we can disable a lot of the safety devices and things like that, and yes, they can be made softer, but then maybe your side airbags don't work or who knows what. It isn't like it used to be. It isn't like where if you wanted a seat to be contoured differently, you simply took the covering off and molded some new foam and so on. Not anymore. There's all kinds of sensors for the safety equipment, the seat belts, all of this stuff that is built into seats these days. Same thing with mirrors. Mirrors are an integral part of the outside of the car, so you can't just take these big clunky ones or the little teeny ones off and put bigger or smaller ones on. No, they aren't made that way anymore. So yes, you could modify the doors or something to make it so that a different size of outside mirror could be installed, but that's going to be outrageously expensive. Now you're buying the car and you're probably looking to get as much car as you can possibly afford, and now you're going to think about adding $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 into modifications to make it the way you want it. Doesn't make sense. So make sure that the car fits you properly before you do it. And the thing with renting a car, best way in the world. Dealers don't want you out there for half an hour, 2 hours, something like that, driving their car, putting miles on it and so on. They also don't want you putting the stuff, maybe you always have a set of golf clubs in the trunk. Or maybe you have a toolbox that you carry that's heavy or whatever. And you normally have 2 or 3 people. Well, you don't take 2 or 3 of your best friends or your carpool buddies or anything to the dealership with you when you go to buy a car. So you do this rental thing, and then you put this stuff that you normally have in your car, you put it into the rental car. And you grab your carpool people and so on, and you slap them in there, and hey, it works. Now you know what the car feels like in real life with people in it and things going on. And you drive it on the roads, your commute to work and all of the trips that you normally do. You spend the weekend driving this silly car. So you know by the end of the weekend, hey, this thing actually does better than my old car. It handles the loads better and it drives better and so on. But on the other hand, it might be a situation where you, at the end of the weekend, wind up saying, oh my God, I'd have hated this car, because by the time you get your carpool people in there and so on, every bump feels like it's a speed hump in the road, and it just, it's horrible. suspension can't stand a load. Suspension's fine with one person in the car, maybe even two, but put some junk in the trunk and put some people in the back seat and so on, and all of a sudden the ride turns to garbage. Well, you wouldn't know that with just the typical road test that most people do. So, and also that bit about, I get these people that write to me and call me and so on, and they say, well, you guys on MotorWeek, you said this was a great car. Well, okay, that was our opinion. But maybe we like a car that rides more firmly than you do, or maybe we like a car that rides softer than you do, or whatever. All of these opinions that you get from magazines and TV and so on, that's exactly what they are. They are opinions. Now, everybody is different. So the big thing you have to make sure is you don't go out and buy something based on my review of a car or John Davis's review of a car or any one of the magazines or the YouTube videos. No. You buy the car because it pleases you, not somebody else. Who cares about what somebody else likes or dislikes about the car? You'll find a lot of reviewers these days pan some really good cars because of stupid concerns. Oh, well, golly gee, it took me too long to input the destination on the GPS, so this is a bad car. Well, it's a bunch of crap. It isn't a bad car. It's only an issue. Maybe you don't use the GPS but once every 6 months or something like that. Then, it is totally immaterial. So it takes you an extra 90 seconds to program it, but that's once every 6 months. Now, if you're into real estate or something like that and you're programming it a dozen or more times a day for different addresses and so on, yeah, it might be a different issue. But it all comes down to what you need, what you expect, what you want, all of this stuff. It all hinges around you. Not my opinion, not a magazine writer's opinion, none of this stuff, because it doesn't apply to you. All right, let's take a break. We'll be right back here on Goss's Garage.
Stay tuned. Pat will take your calls next at 844-885-4677. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
Folks, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about a car dealer that's near and dear to my heart. It's Mercedes-Benz of Annapolis. I've bought over 20 cars from them, but above and beyond that, there is one very special salesman that I always deal with. His name is Wayne Discus, and I would highly suggest you contact him if you're looking for a new Mercedes or used car. He can handle local and national sales. Check out Mercedes-Benz of Annapolis at mercedesofannapolis.com and meet Wayne Discus. Hey, be sure to tell Wayne Pat Goss sent you. mercedesofannapolis.com. This news and views is from Auto Care Pro magazine and deals with automatic transmissions. Although their story relates to an Audi that refused to shift, it could apply to most cars. In this case, the tech did all the proper preliminary tests, including a visual inspection of related parts, which revealed a badly corroded transmission computer. Seems someone had replaced the cabin air filter and didn't properly install its cover. Now, this allowed water to leak onto the computer, and over time the water caused corrosion and no shift. A new module made the Audi shift like new. The tech also reinstalled the cabin air filter cover properly. There are two primary lessons here. First, just because the symptoms are horrific doesn't mean the cause is horrific. In fact, seemingly huge problems may be cheap to fix. Second, this is a case where you'll probably be taken if you didn't pick a good shop. That's because you've already convinced yourself you need a major repair, and when the shop confirms what you suspect, you just go for it. This shop could have easily sold a completely unnecessary transmission, but instead was honest and saved the owner thousands of dollars. So select your shop carefully. Rather than just cheap, look for ASE certification, skill, quality, and above all, honesty. Too often, the cheapest estimates come from shops with overall lower skill sets, or in some cases, something much worse, more greed and less honesty.
This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677.
For those of you enjoying Goss's Garage on TuneIn.com, please note our new showtime every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. Also remember that number, 844-885-4677, 24/7. You can call it, leave us a message. We will get back to you and help you solve your car problems. Or drop me a line at radio@goss-garage.com or at Pat Goss at goss-garage.com. All right, now, Mary from Pennsylvania wanted to know about frozen gas lines. She said the other morning when it was cold, her car wouldn't start. And I actually talked to her on this. I said, what's it doing? I said, the starter motor is turning the engine properly and so on. She says, no, starter motor isn't doing anything. It's not making any noise. It's not spinning the engine. It's not doing anything. So I think I have ice in the gas tank. Excuse me? Ice in the gas tank? Ice in the gas tank has nothing at all to do with the engine not spinning by the starter motor. Nothing whatsoever. That's electrical. Now, granted, if the starter motor was spinning the car or spinning the engine at a normal rate of speed, normal sound and everything like that, and it wouldn't start, yeah, it could be ice in the gas tank. But ice in the gas tank has nothing to do with the starter motor. It only has to do with getting fuel to the engine. So, anyway, with a little chit-chat and talking back and forth, although she really didn't want to believe it, we got her problem resolved with cleaning the battery cable connections. Got to keep them clean, folks. Now, the other thing is that she might have had ice in the gas tank. A lot of you might have. On cold days, it freezes. And when it freezes, you can't get the fuel out of the tank into the engine. No fuel, no run. Just that simple. How do you prevent the ice from freezing? Well, the first thing you have to do is make sure you don't have water in the gas tank. And how do you do that? Well, you do that by adding gas line antifreeze or dry gas once every month, 12 months out of the year. Now, there are two types of this stuff. There is methanol-based. Don't buy it. Don't use it. Don't do anything with it. The only thing it will do is it will keep the water from freezing, but the water will stay in the tank and it'll eat away at the various parts in there, the fuel pump and the gas gauge sender and stuff like that. What you want is isopropyl alcohol dry gas. Isopropyl, not methanol. Isopropyl, not methanol. All right. So, next question that usually comes up, oh, well, I can get a good deal on that. I'll just run down to the drugstore and buy some rubbing alcohol. No. If you look at the bottle of rubbing alcohol, you will see that it is by volume 33% water. Well, that tells you that the solution is already saturated with water. It can't absorb anymore. So that doesn't work because what you want it to do is to absorb water that's in your fuel tank. So you have to buy the dry gas, which is isopropyl, without water in it. That way the isopropyl absorbs the water that's in your fuel tank. The isopropyl mixes with the water, then the water and the alcohol mix as you move the car, drive it down the road, is stirred up and it all mixes together, and the water, the alcohol, is pulled out of the tank along with the gasoline, and you keep the water under control that way. Now, one of the reasons why water is a bigger problem than it used to be is because most areas have ethanol in their fuel. And ethanol is another alcohol, but it is hygroscopic, which simply means that not only does it absorb water, it attracts water to it, attracts water out of the air, the moisture in the air. So we see more problems because of the ethanol. So now you got to dump the isopropyl in there to counteract the effects of the ethanol. And gosh, what are you doing? You're building kind of a cocktail, I guess. Anyway, that's how you deal with water in your gas tank. Isopropyl alcohol dry gas, once every month, 12 months out of the year, because a lot of the water gets in there in the summer. It doesn't cause a problem until winter, but in the summer, when it's really humid and so on, a lot more moisture. All right, now Stan, oh my goodness. Stan says, does he really? Stan says, I've thought about upgrading my 2009 9-year-old Honda Accord LX brakes. He's going to upgrade the brakes on a 2009 Honda Accord LX. Even though the cost would be higher, my two reasons are stop sooner and possibly last longer. The pads, that is. I don't know about anything else that he's talking about there, but the pads, he's hoping they'll last longer. So, is there an advantage to ceramic rotors and pads? Thanks, Stan. Oh my goodness, Stan. Yeah, there are advantages. There are advantages to all of these things, big brake kits and so on. But one thing you have to remember, braking isn't so much controlled by the brakes themselves as it is the tires. Now, if you can jam on the brakes on your car and you can make the tires squawk, granted the ABS will take over, but before the ABS takes over, you get this screech for a fraction of a second. That means the tires lost traction. Now, once they lose traction, they're just sliding along on top of the road. Now, if you make the brakes stronger and do nothing for your tires, they are going to lose traction at exactly the same time because the coefficient of friction between the tires and the road does not change. Now, granted, if you're going to the racetrack and you're going to repeatedly be using the brakes and so on, then you're looking at resistance to brake fade and things like that, and big brakes. Well, sure, they make sense. But out on the road, that's not the way you drive. You aren't accelerating out of a corner and going as fast as you can, only to brake as late as you can into the next corner, and then accelerating out of that, and so on. You just keep repeating that process time and time again every lap around the track. That's a different thing. But out on the road, you don't drive. Well, I take that back. There are some of you who think public roads are racetracks and so on. As a matter of fact, one of my producers has a penchant for doing stuff like that. He tends to be, he drives an AMG car by Mercedes with a big engine and loud exhaust and so on. Actually, he's old enough to know better, but he doesn't, and he has a ball, and he thinks that he's on some grand old track, and he just goes like stink. But he's the exception to the rule. He's why our insurance rates are so high. Anyway, normal people who drive normal cars in a relatively normal manner, they don't get much of a benefit out of a big brake package. So if you want your car to stop quicker, what you do is, if you can break the tires loose through braking, if you can make them lose traction with the existing brakes, then what you want to do is you want to start by upgrading the tires. You might want to go to a wider tire, different profile tire, something like that. But if you don't do that first, then the tires are still going to break loose at the same point, and you're really not going to gain much of anything as far as shorter stopping distances or something like that. Yeah, the pads might last a little longer, but when you consider the price of these big brake kits, Willwood, Brembo, and all the others out there, you can upgrade them to whatever level you want. Time you get labor involved and stuff like that, expect probably someplace between $5,000 and $8,000 for a quality kit installed. Now, old Stan here, Stan, you must read comic books? Don't read car books, that's for sure, because you would then know that ceramic rotors and carbon fiber rotors and 8-piston calipers and stuff like that are outrageously expensive. Some of these exotic rotors you will pay in excess of $4,000 for each rotor. All right, well, that may be okay if you're going to the track, and they'll last 5 to 10 times as long as regular steel rotors, and they'll cut down your lap times and so on, so you may win some prize money and different things like that. But, you know, an 09 Accord LX, to consider putting $5,000 plus maybe another $6,000-7,000 into the exotic rotors for it and so on, and you're probably going to be spending like 12 grand. I doubt the car is worth anything close to that. So no, it doesn't make any sense. Personally, what I use Akibono ceramic pads on my cars. Akibono. Best quality. I also use Centrix rotors without grooves or cross drilling or anything, because I'm not going to the track, and those things don't do anything on the street. What they do is they make the guy in the car next to you, ooh, look at those rotors. Ooh, isn't he something special? Well, I don't care if the guy in the car next to me likes my rotors or doesn't like my rotors, because I will probably never meet this person, and why would I care about his opinion, what he likes or doesn't like? You know, I'm not going to win any prizes. If he loves it, I'm not going to win any prizes for that. If he totally adores what he sees on my car, is he going to give me a substantial amount of money? Not likely. So why would I care if somebody that I don't know, I will never meet, who is not going to give me money, who is not going to give me a trophy, likes or dislikes what they see on my brakes. Doesn't make sense. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back here on Goss's Garage.
Operators are standing by to take your call for Pat at 844-885-4677. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
Think you'll pocket a lot more money if you sell rather than trade your car? Perhaps, but appearance sells cars, and your poor car is a bit grungy. There's dull paint, that ugly coffee stain on the seat, and a sweaty arm stain on the door, plus crumbs in every crack and crevice. Yep, when you look close, it's kind of ugly, and sadly for you, most used cars are bought on looks more than condition. That means a good cleanup job or pay a couple $100 to have it done. Next, because many used car buyers pull dipsticks and check fluids, you should clean the engine bay and change all the fluids. Buyers usually don't know what's good or bad, but someone on the internet says smart shoppers pull dipsticks, so buyers pull dipsticks, which often leads to questions about service and possible problems. Also, if the tires show any wear, buyers may assume there are worn front end parts. Don't forget the high cost of ads so people know it's for sale. And the questions. Is there a warranty? Will you take a trade? Is it inspected? Will you take a check? Can I give you $100 down and $100 a week? And so on. Now, a biggie. You might actually be risking your life, too. Where do you safely show a car so you don't have strangers eyeballing you and your home or trying to steal the car? When you look at the aggravation, work, expense, and dangers of selling a car, trading often looks really good. I get lots of air filter questions, and one of the most common deals with why air filters need to be replaced so often. Well, actually, they usually don't. Yet many drivers wind up buying a new air filter at every oil change, which is utterly ridiculous. Drivers say techs tell them if they don't buy a new air filter, they'll waste a lot of gas. Maybe that statement comes from ignorance or maybe dishonesty, but either way, you lose. Decades ago, dirty air filters did waste gas, but today, not so much. Cars now use a sensor to measure the air coming through the air filter, and computers to mix exactly the right amount of gas to match that air. So even though a dirty air filter reduces airflow into the engine, it doesn't affect gas mileage because the computer is always precisely matching fuel to the incoming air. In other words, a dirty filter means less air, and less air means less gas, so there's never an imbalance between air and fuel. Certainly when a filter gets really, really dirty, it can cause performance problems, but even then it may not affect gas mileage. So how long do air filters last? Unless you drive in really dusty conditions, air filters usually last 30 to 60,000 miles. Overselling of air filters is an enormous problem, and the best way not to be taken is to learn how to check your own air filter and check it twice a year.
Now, back to Goss's Garage with your host, Pat Goss.
Hey folks, please subscribe to Goss's Garage on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, and for more car tips, tricks, and money-saving ideas, visit goss-garage.com. 844-885-4677 if you have a question or a comment. Give me a call, 844-885-4677, or you can email radio@goss-garage.com or Pat Goss at goss-garage.com. So we'd love to talk to you. All right, now this is from Boyd. This is the second time in 9 years I'm writing. I have bought a used 2010 VW Golf. The tires that came on the car are not a matched set. There are 3 of the same brand and one that is not the same. The one that is not the same is a tire that is made exclusively for one of the major chain stores. It has 9/32 of tread and it's on the back. My question is, are the tires that are made for the big chain stores the same quality as the tires made for general retailers. All right. Well, Boyd, I wish I could answer your question, but unfortunately I cannot. Reason being, there is no way to know the build criteria set down by each chain store on each model of tire. You see, the major tire companies build these tires for these chain stores, but the chain store says we need a tire that meets this set of criteria. All right? We don't know what the criteria are because we have no way to see their technical bid forms and stuff like that. Now, in some cases, these house brand tires will be the same or even better than the name brand. But in some cases, the house brand will be lower quality to meet a price point. Now, we don't know which it is. Now, because which are lesser quality is hidden in the specs for the bid, there is no way to know how these tires are constructed. Additionally, the supplier may, in some cases, elect to simply make a new mold. Now, they can make molds a lot cheaper than they can redesign a tire and spec it out for one of these chain stores. So what they do is, in some cases, they make a mold that has the chain store's name on it, or whatever the name of the tires that is exclusively theirs, and they take the regular tires that they make for all of the populace, and instead of putting whatever their name is on it, they simply emboss the tire in this new mold with the chain store's name. And in that case, you get a good price and you get the same tire that you would get if you bought the major name brand. But there's no way to know. So, we don't know. Other things that these companies may do is they may accept a lower grade of finesse. In other words, we find tires all the time, especially the house brand tires, the ones that have some chain store's name on them. We find those all the time that have high road force variation. Now, we put it on the machine. We had one the other day. There was like 60 pounds of road force variation. Well, we like to see them under 10. And because the tire was low quality as far as the way it runs out and things like that, and may have even been rejected for the name brand company, because it was so far out, there was no way to mount it in such a manner that it would correct that problem. So it was just plainly a defective tire. And a lot of these chain stores do not recognize road force variation. That is not covered by their warranty. So what you wind up with is a tire that, as you go down the road, feels like it's out of balance. Shakes like a dog pooing razor blades. I mean, it's just nuts. But, and you don't know until you've bought the tires, you've got them on the car, and nobody can straighten them out and make it run smooth and so on. So, wish I could guide you, but I can't. All right, Robert. Oh, Robert is a real jokester. Robert wants to know, he says, his subject line, timing belt on 2003 Honda. This is a low mileage, 70,000 mile V6 with the original belt. should it be replaced? Thanks, Bob. Bob, I do hope, I sincerely hope, oh, I hope that you are freaking joking. Timing belts have to be replaced based on mileage or time. Whichever comes first, not whichever comes last, whichever comes first. Now, for most Honda models, that's either 90,000 or 102,000 miles, or it's a maximum of 6 years. So yeah, you're kind of courting disaster. Disaster means a couple thousand to $6,000 when it lets go, and it will fail. Not if, but only when. At 13 years, I highly recommend you get it replaced, and I would suggest that you do it no later than yesterday. Because rubber only lasts so long. And 13 years, oh my God. Some people are very, very lucky. You must drive it very, very fast. I would presume that to get it to last that long, that a high rate of speed is 40 miles an hour, and a jackrabbit start is something that gets him to 60 miles an hour in under a minute and a half. But 13 years on a timing belt. I'm not sure I've ever seen one go that long before. And the problem is that is an interference engine. And if the timing belt breaks, the valves hit the pistons. And if he's lucky, it's just $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 to do a valve job on it and do the timing belt, because that he should have done anyway. He still has to do the timing belt, and now he has to do all of this engine work. So I don't know. Anyway, timing belts should be replaced based on time or mileage, because rubber deteriorates with time as well as mileage. So the longest I've seen as far as an allowable life for a timing belt is 6 years. Some manufacturers say 4, some say 5, Honda says 6. So, if you don't put many miles on your car, it doesn't mean you don't have to change the timing belt, because you do. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back on Goss's Garage.
Stay tuned. Pat will take your calls next at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
Folks, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about a car dealer that's near and dear to my heart. It's Mercedes-Benz of Annapolis. I've bought over 20 cars from them, but above and beyond that, there is one very special salesman that I always deal with. His name is Wayne Discus, and I would highly suggest you contact him if you're looking for a new Mercedes or used car. He can handle local and national sales. Check out Mercedes-Benz of Annapolis at mercedesofannapolis.com and meet Wayne Discus. Hey, be sure to tell Wayne Pat Goss sent you. mercedesofannapolis.com. Do you use the proper strategy when buying replacement parts for your car or truck? Hi, I'm Pat Goss for Goss's Garage, and I've noticed that many of you who buy auto parts make a huge mistake. You shop for one and only one thing: price. Now, naturally, price is important, but quality is more important. When you buy the cheapest part in town, you may sacrifice quality, and less quality often means shorter life and less reliability. In some cases, the cheapest part may even compromise vehicle safety. For the best value from the parts you buy, look for the lowest price, but only on high-quality parts. When you compare prices, be sure you're comparing parts that have the same specifications. And never buy a part with a lower rating than your car requires. What many drivers don't realize is cheap can be very costly in the end. Quality usually costs less per mile over the long haul. I'm Pat Goss for Goss's Garage.
This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. And now, Pat Goss.
Hey, for those of you enjoying Goss's Garage on TuneIn.com, please note our new showtime every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And don't forget the number, write it down, 844-885-4677. You can use that number 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Also, contact me, radio@goss-garage.com or patgoss@goss-garage.com. All right, I don't know how you folks get yourself into some of these messes. I don't know. Well, I know how David did. David has a question here, and David did it by looking for the cheapest guy in town, which often bites you. Cheap doesn't mean inexpensive. Hello, Mr. Goss. I took my Kia Forte to Firestone over the weekend to have the rear brake pads and rotors replaced. When I returned home and looked at the rear brakes, I noticed that the technician did not install the new brake hardware, which came with the new Wagner Thermo Quiet pads. Can you tell me if it's necessary to replace the hardware when replacing the brake pads? Do you think it would be a good idea to bring the vehicle back to have the old brake hardware replaced on my rear brakes? Thank you for your assistance. All right, David, do you really think the brake manufacturer puts that bright, shiny new hardware in the kit so it will look pretty on the shelf? I don't think so. It was included for a reason, but you elected to go to cheap guy rather than good guy for brakes of all things. Cheapest guy in town to get your brakes done, the most important safety feature, and yet everybody looks for the cheapest guy in town, the cheapest pads, the cheapest hardware, and so on, and they're going to trust their life to the lowest bidder. Anyway, get it back and make them do the job right. That would also include a non-directional finish on the rotors and proper brake lube where it's needed, plus pad silencing material on the front and back of the pads. Cheap guys really do these things. Actually, many never learned how last week when they were flipping burgers. And all these things are so important. All right, let's go to the phones and let's talk to Chris from Silver Spring, Maryland. Chris, welcome to Goss's Garage.
Thank you, Pat, and good morning. I have a 2008 Ford Focus, and I was recently in a shop for just an oil change and tire rotation, and the service advisor came up to me and said, based on my cold cranking amps, that I should think about battery replacement. And I'm not opposed to replacing the battery, but I haven't had any problems cranking or starting the car or noticed any symptoms. I know the battery is about 3.5 years in age. They shared with me what the printout said. It was around 468 cold cranking amps.
Okay. Do we know what the rating on the battery was in cold cranking amps?
I think he showed that he had it plugged in at 600, but this particular battery, I believe, was purchased from Advance Auto Parts, and I know it's probably an Autocraft Gold,
right?
And it's stamped on the battery 740.
Okay.
Cranking amps.
Well, the thing of it is, if their test is accurate, that's telling you that the battery is going bad because it has lost, 40% of its ability to do work. We would expect at 3.5 years, if the battery was still really good, that we might have lost something between 5 and 10%. Now, that doesn't mean that
Okay.
it's going to fail tomorrow or anything of the kind, and it might go for years. We don't know that. There's no way to predict that. But the fact of the matter is that it's no longer as good as what it should be. But that said, your car should not need anything approaching 700 cold cranking amps. It's good to have. It's always better to have more than you need.
Yeah, I think the label said 740
right.
cranking amps, not cold cranking
amps.
Oh, cranking amps. I don't know what it's rated.
Cranking amps, all right. Cranking
because
amps
I didn't purchase. Yeah, I didn't purchase the battery, and I haven't owned the car that long. I've only been an owner of it the last 6 months.
Okay, so they gave you a reading in cold cranking amps, and the battery is rated in cranking amps, so those numbers suggest that that battery is probably almost perfect, because cranking amps gives you a much higher rating than cold cranking amps.
Okay, but when they showed me their little printout sheet, they had for the top number 600 CCAs, and my reading was, I think, either 468 or 480 CCAs.
Yeah, so you're not that far off the mark. Now, of course, any battery, it could fail tomorrow, but there's nothing there that would alarm me.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't too alarmed by the reading either. I was suspicious of perhaps the upsale, but I know that batteries do degrade over time.
Yes, they do. So, but those are not bad numbers.
Okay, I didn't think so. And the other question I had in terms of battery replacement, I asked if the replacement battery would have vent caps or not, and they said they didn't recommend vent caps on any battery.
Well, it would be hard to find because for the most part those batteries are obsolete, and the reason being is that most batteries use a common vent that's built into the top of the battery so that they can channel the corrosive fumes to a proper position under the hood or in the trunk or wherever to avoid eating up various things like some of the older cars. When they would overcharge, they'd have 6 vent caps and they'd have a little hole in the center of them. You'd see these cars come into the shop and there would be 6 little perfectly positioned blisters in the paint on the hood. And you open the hood up and the battery had been overcharged and the fumes had come up against the underside of the hood and actually ate a hole through the metal.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'm not using the right terminology, and I apologize. I was more interested in getting a battery where I could monitor the amount of distilled water and add it.
Yeah, I know. We would all like that, but for the most part, they don't exist anymore.
Okay. Well, the current battery that I have in there allows you to add water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are a few, but by and large, I don't think I have a single battery out here in the shop that has that capability.
Okay. And why is that today?
Because they want to be able to channel these fumes, and in order to contain them properly, they just mold the top of the battery in such a way that they eliminate the caps.
I understand.
And I'm sure there's an underlying reason. I presume that they sell more batteries by doing it that way too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Chris?
Okay, thank you, Pat.
You bet. Thank you. And Ken from Laurel, Maryland. Welcome to Goss's Garage.
Right, Pat. I was looking at some stuff on the internet the other day, and I noticed one of they were putting magnets on oil filters. Is that doing anything, or is that another one of those fallacies of looking at the internet?
Oh, no, it helps a little bit, but for the most part, engines these days, and it was quite beneficial 30 years ago. It's an old technology. I think I recommended that on MotorWeek about 30 years ago. And what's changed is that the majority of the metal filings these days are aluminum, which is, of course, non-ferrous, non-magnetic, so it doesn't help a bit with anything aluminum. And the other thing is that filters are far, far better than they used to be. So the majority of any type of metal filings is very quickly filtered out of the system.
Yeah, that's what I thought. If you had a good filter, you wouldn't need to put a magnet on there.
Right. Yeah, I would say that 99.999999 and keep going for 100 places of the cars on the road do not have a magnet on their oil filter.
On another related question, as you know, I got an older Mustang, 85, and I noticed the other day the oil pressure was kind of high for the complete trip. Usually it starts out high when you start the engine, and then it comes down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean anything on those cars? Because I know it's electronic. It's not real oil pressure, is it?
No, and I don't know. I think that's the about the vintage where the oil pressure gauge wasn't really a gauge. It was actually a light with
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, and what that typically means
it's a gauge,
is,
but it's a...
Well, does yours, when everything is normal, when you come to a stop, does it drop down and then...
No, it stays at a certain level, but
Right.
It starts out higher when it's cold, the engine.
Yeah. All right. Well, what that usually means is that the sending unit, the resistance in the sending unit, there's a 20 ohm resistor in that circuit that makes the gauge always go to about the same place. Something has caused the resistance to change. So it isn't the sort of thing.
Because it fixed itself, because a couple of days later, it went back to the normal range.
Yeah. That's kind of a quirky system. I don't know what Ford was thinking of, but they did it for a lot of years and got away with it. So, but it isn't something.
Is it possible a piece of dirt could have got stuck in the bypass on the oil filter and caused higher pressure? Or?
Yeah. There are things like that could happen. Absolutely.
Yeah, because it cleared up after a while. And I changed the oil a lot in that car.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing, the last time I changed the oil, I put in the high mileage oil.
Right.
It was probably a little bit more detergent in there.
Yeah. It's the sort of thing, if it comes back, then I would test it. I still wouldn't be overly worried about it because of the way that system works. But, only if it comes back. If it stays normal, I wouldn't worry about it.
Is it possible that you can destroy an engine with too high an oil pressure?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but usually what happens is that the oil pressure relief valve sticks and it builds 600, 700, 800, 900 PSI, and usually that causes the oil filter to just explode, and when that happens, all the oil comes out of it in a matter of seconds, and you burn up the engine before you can get it off the road. It isn't directly because of the high oil pressure.
Right. Okay, thanks a lot, Pat.
Take care, Ken. Good talking to you. All right, folks, thanks for listening. Thanks to Steve McMillan and Hot Rod George Stockton for producing today's show. For everyone here at Goss's Garage, I'm Pat Goss. Until next time, please everybody, drive gently. We will see you next time.